During the corona pandemic or the Russia-Ukraine war, there was one sector which was making unprecedented profits, and that is the oil and gas sector. Hello and welcome to the In Focus series section of Drishti IAS. I am Aisha Singh, and in today's video we will be discussing about the windfall tax. What is windfall tax and what brought our attention towards the windfall tax? So first let us look at the timeline of the video. First we will be looking at the news. Then what is windfall tax and why is it so much in news since last many months? What are the benefits to the government of windfall tax and the countries levying windfall taxes? What is the global scenario about it? Then other countries imposing windfall tax and what are the issues with imposing windfall tax? In the end we will be looking into a prelims MCQ and a mains practice question. This topic is of relevance from General Studies Paper 3, Economy. See, from prelims point, you should be able to know that what is windfall tax, because many a times it has been seen that in prelims MCQ questions are being asked from the portion of taxes. Then from mains, you should be able to know what is windfall tax, what are its benefits, and what are the other countries who are imposing the windfall tax. So let us look at the news, and this news has been taken from The Hindu Explained, and it says, what is windfall tax and why are countries imposing it on the energy sector right now? So there are two components. First is what is the windfall tax, and second is why are they imposing on the energy sector. That why it is that the energy sector is in news because of the windfall tax, or the windfall tax is in news because of the energy sector. What has happened? So recently we have seen that Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has defended the central government's decision of imposing the windfall tax on the energy and oil, gases and energy sector, on the crude oil petrol sector. So what has happened is that earlier the center imposed the windfall tax on domestic crude oil producers, and central government introduced a windfall profit tax of 23,250 per ton. Per ton it was imposed on domestic crude oil production. So what was happening was that, like for example, imagine that the company which is having the domestic production of oil and the cost for them is rupees 60 for domestic production. But what they were doing was they were selling on the international market price, and the international market price, for example, is rupees 100. So the domestic production is rupees 60, but they were selling it on the international market price, that was rupees 100. So there was profit of rupees 40 straightforward. And what they were doing also, that they were exporting the crude oil from the domestic production. So they were making even more benefit from the export. So this was not even helping the domestic consumers in the country, plus the oil and the gas companies were earning a lot of profit. So on this lot of profit which they were making, on this very high profit, unprecedented profit, sudden profit, the government thought of taxing the oil and gas companies. So this is what was happening, and the central government revised the windfall tax profit fortnightly 4 times so far. So earlier it was 23,250, then the latest revision has been from rupees 13,000 to 13,300 per ton. So this is what has happened, that the Indian government, that is the central government, has put a windfall tax on the crude oil producers. So the introduction of windfall tax is a way to rein in phenomenal profits made by some oil refiners. So see, the example that I gave you was this one, where the producer was making a profit of rupees 40. So imagine that every time they are doing it, they are making this profit, and accumulatively this amount becomes a very huge amount. So this is what is called that the producers are making, the oil and gas producers are making phenomenal profits, and this phenomenal profits should be taxed. This is what the government feels. Then the export fuel to reap the benefits of skyrocketing global prices while affecting domestic supplies. And it is not that India is the only country who is doing it. Apart from India, we have seen that all over the world windfall taxes are in practice, be it United Kingdom, Germany, Italy, all the countries globally are putting windfall taxes so that the government can also have little bit of amount from the profit that the oil and the gas producer companies have made since last 2-3 years. So now let us look at what is windfall tax. So okay, look at the word windfall. What does the windfall means? When something comes to you suddenly. Imagine that you have won a lot of amount in a lottery. See, for example, you can say that you have cracked a lottery which costs you rupees 1 crore. So 1 crore is a lot of amount if it is coming to you suddenly and you have not made any extra efforts for it. So if you have taken this amount of 1 crore, then the government will also expect to have some portion of it in the form of a tax, because this is not the amount for which you have worked very much hard or you have put in extra effort, or this has come in a long period of time. So the government wants an extra pie of it. So that is called windfall tax. See, according to the United States Congressional Research Service, that is the CRS, it defines a windfall tax as unearned, unanticipated gain in income through no additional effort or expense. When no additional expertise or efforts are put in, and still the person or the company is able to have exponential profits, very high profits, then it is called windfall tax, and they are imposed by a government against certain industries when they experience above range profits due to economic conditions. And this certain industry in present times is coming out to be the oil and gas industry, and companies were seen to be making abnormal profits with oil prices shooting up in global markets due to geopolitical turmoil. So what happened during the period of Russia-Ukraine war? Russia is one of the biggest exporters of oil, gas and natural resources. So what has happened that due to the war, Russia was not able to export that much. So because of which there was a demand and a supply gap. The demand went high while the supply was very low, because of which the amount or the price of the oil skyrocketed. So who was benefiting from it? While the normal people was demanding the oil, but the presence of oil was not there in the market that much. So because of which the prices of the oil skyrocketed, and it was the oil and gas companies, the oil and gas producers, which was reaping the profits, which was reaping this gap of demand and supply. So it is this profit that the oil and gas producers has made, not because they worked extra, not because they made extra efforts, not because they did something extra, but because of the surrounding situations that they were able to make unprecedented profits or amazing profits or extra profits, very high profits, that a tax was imposed by the government on this, that a particular amount from this profits that the companies are making should be given to the government. Then they are primarily directed on companies in a certain industry that sees the most windfalls economically. So the particular industries it is put on, it is not that the windfall tax is put on each and every industry. No, it is a one-time tax, and it is put on extremely rare industries who are making amazing profits. Now let us talk about few of the benefits of windfall tax, that if the government puts the windfall tax on a company, what are the benefits that the government can have while putting these windfall taxes? Then that can be, it boosts government revenues, because windfall tax is only put when the industry is making exponential benefits, and exponential benefits means that the tax amount will also be huge, and the tax amount, when the tax amount will be huge, then it will also help in increasing the treasury of the government. Then it provides public services and other benefits to the citizens. So when the government will have more amount in their treasury, then the government will be able to spend more on their schemes and on the vulnerable and the poor people, or on the marginalized people. Then windfall gains can repay interest bearing consumers, and it can invest the windfall proceeds in gold deposits. So these are the benefits that the government can have, and the windfall taxes can also help in narrowing the widening trade deficit, because the government will earn a lot of amount from the windfall taxes. So the widening trade deficit, that we already know that the trade deficit of India is very high. So this amount can also be helpful in narrowing the trade deficit. Then varying rationales for government worldwide. It is not that every government will have the same rationale for the windfall tax. It is different for different governments. Like for example, it can also be used for funding social welfare schemes. Because the government will receive more amount, then the government will be able to give more amount towards the citizen welfare, towards the consumer welfare, for their schemes, for the PDS, for every other thing, for the vulnerable and the marginalized sections. Then as a supplementary revenue stream for the government, one of the examples can be in 1980, United States President Jim Carter introduced a crude oil windfall profit tax. This was in 1980s. So imagine in 1980s also there was a concept of windfall tax on the country's oil industry. So there was a windfall profit tax on in the US on oil industry. So what did the US government thought was that the US government between 1979 and 1981 started releasing controls. They started releasing controls. They were taking out their scrutinies which they had already kept there. So they started releasing control on oil prices, and they anticipated that this decontrol would lead to oil companies making huge profits. Because if the oil companies will make huge profits, then the US government thought that they will be able to put the windfall tax and will be able to get a lot of money in the form of the windfall profit tax or windfall tax profit. Then the prices would rise to world market levels, and decontrol would increase profits for the oil industry by over 400 billion. This is what the US government did in 1980s. So it is not that the windfall tax concept is a new concept in the market. No, it was there, but we have been hearing it recently since last few months. Now let us look at that why the country is levying windfall taxes. So the prices of oil, gas and coal have been rising sharply in the last few months, or you can say in the year of 2021 and 2022. So this has become a much bigger issue, that there should be some tax put on these companies, because they are making so much of profits from the people who are suffering, from the people who are not able to have their own living standards, and they are not able to maintain their proper living standards. Then there was mismatch between energy demand and supply in the market, especially because of the Russia-Ukraine war. Then because of economic recovery from COVID-19, also the world economy shattered during the COVID-19. Everyone knew what happened. Then now we are in a period of recovery. So even during these two periods of Russia-Ukraine war and the recovery during the COVID-19, the crude oil producers, all the oil and natural gas producers were making heavy profits, large profits, unprecedented profits. Then there were heavy profits for oil companies. So even the United Nations Secretary General, that is Antonio Guterres, he also criticized the greed of these big companies and said that they are doing immoral things, and the largest energy companies have made a combined profit of close to $100 billion. I'll just show you the chart also. This is what led to the putting of the windfall taxes, that why the countries was levying the windfall taxes. That if someone is making so much of profit, even at the time when the world is suffering, when the vulnerable and the marginalized sections are suffering, when people of the world are not able to maintain their living standards and are even not able to fulfill their basic needs, then if someone is making profits, then they need to share those profits with the government. Okay, look at this chart. This is about the windfall profits, and this says that the combined profits of Shell, okay, these are few of the biggest oil producing companies of the world, that is Shell, ExxonMobil, Total Energies, BP, Chevron Corp and Saudi Aramco, biggest of them. Then the combined profit of these companies went from 45.09 billion in Q2 of 2021 to 107.64 billion, more than double in Q2 of 2022. So within 1 year, within a span of one single year, the combined profit of all these companies increased from 45.09 billion to 107.64 billion. So it has almost doubled, more than double. So this is what is the amount or the scale of or the intensity of profit which the oil companies have made in the last 1 year. Then the UN chief has urged all governments to tax these excessive profits and use the funds to support the most vulnerable people through these difficult times. See, imagine about the continent like Africa, which is not majorly equipped with all the techniques to cope up with these times. And also in India, we have seen that the people were suffering so much, people were losing their jobs, people were not able to earn their even the basic amenities during the time of the COVID pandemic. That is why the UN chief has urged that they should put tax on the companies who are making excessive profits and use the funds to support the vulnerable and the marginalized sections. Then the UN chief has also received support from the IMF and the OECD. Then what has happened in July is that India announced a windfall tax on domestic crude oil producers and reaping the benefits of the high oil prices, because in India also the oil companies were making huge profits. It also imposed an additional excise levy on diesel, petrol and air turbine fuel, that is ATF. So India is also putting the windfall taxes on the oil companies. Now let us look at the global scenario, that what is happening in the other countries. So it is not, India is not the only country. In Germany also the windfall tax has been put on electricity companies to partially fund a 65 billion euro package. Then in Italy also one-time windfall tax of 25% was put on energy companies. Then in space, profits earned in 2020 and 2023 by electricity utility companies. Then in United Kingdoms also 25% of windfall tax was kept on oil and gas producers. Now what are the issues with the imposing these windfall taxes? What are the problems that arise is that these sudden impose of windfall taxes on a sector make the market uncertain. So there becomes uncertainty in the market when suddenly the windfall taxes is imposed. Then the sudden one-off surprises in the tax system also. Imagine about the people who are investing in it or in the share market, are looking after the oil and gas companies, and suddenly a windfall tax comes. Then there is uncertainty and volatility in the market. Then what has happened in Italy was that the taxes was kept on companies and the companies did not give the tax. So many Italian power, oil and gas companies had not paid their 40% installment of windfall taxes. So this can also be a issue, that someone keep on having a look over whether the taxes has been paid or not. Then one big question would be that who will pay the tax? Imagine there is a big company who can afford to pay the tax, but there on the other side there is also a small company which has made big profits, but that is very small in scale. So who will pay the taxes? Both the big and the small companies would pay the taxes, or the tax would only be paid by the big companies and not by the small companies? So these kind of questions also remains. Now let's come to the prelims MCQ, and you people need to tell me the answer in the comment section. And the question says, with reference to windfall tax, consider the following statements. Statement 1 is, it is a tax levied by governments against certain industries when economic conditions allow those industries to experience above average profits. And second statement is, the imposition of the tax make the product costlier. And the codes are 1 only, 2 only, both 1 and 2, neither 1 nor 2. So now let's come to the last aspect, that is the mains practice question, and that says, what is windfall tax? Why is Indian government imposing it on the energy sector? And state few global examples also. It is a 10-marker question. And what are the commands that you people need to follow is, first write what is windfall tax, write its definition or whatever you understand by it, and also give examples. Then write about why is in recent times the Indian government is imposing the windfall tax on the energy sector, and then give some global examples also that I've already told you in the video or in the previous slides. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Till we meet next time, keep reading and keep writing.